Yeah, how we doing, guys? What's going on? Let's get going and look at some stocks for tomorrow. A couple things first. Really tight range today on the Qs. Again, we saw a little bit more push and pull today with some of the photonic stocks up. It kind of faded off the highs. A-Lab gapped and faded off the highs. ARM gapped and faded off the highs. You had Marvell trade, really positively. And then a handful: CBRS, COHR, TER, CIEN. I thought were some standouts. Those are some main ones on my list. AXTI was up there as well. SNDK, Micron performed really well. Kind of a handful of semis. Um, a handful of semis, some genomic stocks, a couple crypto names. Bitcoin actually had a pretty decent update, about 2%. Um, Oil stock strong, but it was, yeah, mostly a handful of semi equipment names. And then, on the flip side, some of these were, fairly red. UMAC, after this big day was down like 11.5%. Some of the, software names, ServiceNow was down 5%, Mongo Bongo down 5%. Twilio down 4%, Shopify down 4%. Again, these are doing nothing wrong, just kind of resting in. So, just seeing a little bit of that push pull type, activity. MBIS down 3%. But again, look at that candle. Like that's not a bad 3% at all. Fastly down 3%. So, um, overall, it is just a steady uptrend grind to where stocks are picking certain days to go. So, with that being said, it is apparent to just focus on individual names and actually want to get right into kind of the scenarios for today, for probably into the second half of the week. I do think that we get some sort of probably check back or gut test soon, either that or we kind of just end up going pretty quickly and aggressively higher. But I think that one little gut check day might be coming. And the close of the fall through day is probably that first area that I want to pay attention to, 724, and then pretty much the low right here of Tuesday 8/11, about 715, are basically the two areas that I'm looking for the market. That'd be the 90 May essentially and the 20 May in the coming days. Or either that or we're looking at these highs right there about 734 to get over. But paying attention minimally to the cues. SMH was up at 1% today. You got the 50-day somewhere right up above here. Again, just kind of grinding up. Not really, anything too exciting. Just kind of grinding up. That's why it'd be nice to see this kind of check back a little bit or accelerate faster. And I think either one is possible. So we're just gonna have to kind of play through those, scenarios as they come. And then when you look at some of the leaders, CrowdStrike, pulling back to the 90 May, doing nothing wrong. I mean, this has always been kind of a quick move up, deeper pullback type of stock. RBRK, deserves some rest. Went from 70 to 100 and $106. So that's what, about 50% gain. Probably gonna, come back and, chop around this 100 to about 90, 95-ish range for a few days. Look at Mongo Bongo, same thing. Snowflake actually held up really well, extremely tight. You look back, at the end of May, this was just $175, is up, just under 100% in a couple months. You look at the weekly though, this is performing really well. Um, and then what are some other leadership names? MBIS post earnings. This is fine, honestly. I think you can, if you didn't get this on the earnings day through this like 230-ish level. I think basically anything 260 to 247, you can probably look for some buying signals to come in and basically any time from here. Ideally you'd get something like this to form out, nice orderly flag, but I'm not sure if that occurs. It is MBIS, it's a little bit crazier. But I think this is, worth watching. And overall, I see a lot of, people with, maybe some You know what I mean, to be too critical, but some random watch list per se. And I always have some on my list, your B-Fly, your AEVA, F-Cell apps, etc. Even like, various outside group stock like CLF or like a new core or what have you, or something that's, slightly illiquid. Trade like 500K shares a day, but it's in the AI space or software space. And I really think that at this point in the market, um, I think that's a mistake because I think there's a lot of these really obvious stocks that on a pullback could set up some immaculate spots, and and I think the most focused trader will have the best execution, and that's my going to be my objective, and that's really kind of like a primary focus over the next coming days. You guys know me, I'm like the king of long watch list, and I've spent a lot of time trying to nail this down a little bit because I do want to know where I think is best, and when that's going to be too, because I can say, oh yeah, MDB like is best, oops, MDB, but like realistically this isn't going to set up a buy signal for a very long time. RBRK, probably the same thing, like maybe early next week, after five more candles, maybe even later this week, something like this. I could see myself kind of trying to chase it up a little bit, even though I don't think it'd necessarily be a chase. um right, the negative traders calls it a chase. Um the the person who wants to get exposure is a more positive way of looking at it. No, I'm just getting exposure to the best names. It's not chasing, I'm getting exposure to the best names. Just a way of framing it for yourself. Anyways, but yeah, I really do want to kind of focus on some of the best names. Just TER, pretty bummed about this. We talked about this on the kicker candle day, and then it kind of just got away. Checked back in at 400 on Wednesday, or sorry, on Thursday and Friday. I was curious as to what it would do early in the week. One of the best performing names today. Next higher low, I think we're going to want to hammer. COHR, Light, AAOI, I think all look really good as well. It's actually pretty interesting in this TSEM coming into the week. Around this 250 mark, and I kind of still am. Want to see how it behaves a little bit. Kind of got a nasty upper wick. Want to see how it acts going forward because I am still interested in that. AMD building out, man, you get a gap down in like a red to green through 500 and you tap of the 20 May, you've got potentially like a super tight area to risk against and that little 1 2 3 pattern for us. So yeah, again, um I think this is something to really pay attention to. Fastly, another one, 1 2 3 4 5 days of basically rest under 30 bucks here. You get a nice little dip here to kind of maybe undercut this range, undercut the close of this big candle, where it's up 20%. I think you could find, a spot to risk off of sooner rather than later, or something like this to occur. Um, and if that happens, I want to be focused on that. I don't want to be randomly like, oh yeah, IMAX, AMC, LMT, looks good, or whatever the fuck. Um, or yeah, Amazon, Google, they're going to move your, for a 0.5%. Or even if you're lucky and you catch like a generational type of move, you catch something like this for 40%. Yeah, good, sweet stuff. So that's essentially where I want my focus to be. So I'm gonna go through. Oh, CIEN's another one. I'm just gonna go through probably some of my favorite names, and where I'm interested in them and the path that I want to see them take. MBIS is up there. Again in this zone, give or take, probably half an ATR or a third of an ATR around this spot. FSLY, same thing. Right around this range, give or take, in an ATR. And again, you guys know what I like to see. I like to see pullback, higher low, undercut, some sort of hourly some sort of hourly hammer candle or buy candle, get a candle to hold, break the previous candle high, entry, stop trigger, easily defined, working off the daily, using the hourly for, some entry tactics. ARM, I still think this could potentially be in play underneath 265 on some sort of hammer candle, or even a gap up and reclaim around this area. I'm less focused on that because I'm more interested in this Marvell. If we come back in and test around 217, or get some sort of inside day around 230, and then undercut today's low at 225. So the two levels that I'll give you on this one are going to be this 216 spot now and 225. And then you got 240 resistance up above right there. So gonna need to see how the path ends up playing out over the next coming days on this. But that's one that I'm definitely super interested in. I do have CIEN pretty high on my list just because I like the way that this like four candles are building out. It was up 11% this day, as it remounted, and it's just kind of going sideways. You got this like 410-ish level gap up low right there, and then it's been kind of dancing around this close around 430. So I'm basically going to be tracking this between 430 and about 450, call it 433 more like, and seeing if we can get some tightness, and then using again the hourly to our advantage, looking at the hourly over here, saying, okay, if this is a daily chart right here on like some sort of earnings gap up, or basing, what do I want to see to get involved, and will I be paying attention to it as it gets involved. DOCN kind of starting to look like wedging up, so I'm not quite sure. I think I'm going to let this one go, see if it can pop up into 150, and then put in a higher low after that, is what I want to see on that now. I tried this back here a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't able to stick around. Light, same thing. Um, undercut of like 880 would be ideal, or sooner rather than later. You get popped up in $1,000. So, seeing this flag out would be ideal in the near term. We'll see if that ends up doing this. CBRS, I think you watch for the next higher low activity, around anywhere from 230 to about 240, give or take. Because I do think it's gonna chop around and give some of that tightness, some of that core weave type action from post IPO. I think it was like May 2025 or whatever. Um, it's basically the main list. I want to see if there's anything that I'm, truly missing. I know I kind of jumped around a little bit on this. But I want to see if there's any main ones that I'm missing after I jumped around. Dell, HPE, still have those. They could trigger buys as early as tomorrow, yeah, on a reclaim, but I've already got them, so don't need to focus on them. Something like Unity, I think looks good, but needs some time. We talked about AMD, Frog. This one I probably should mention, around this $90 level, and then around probably 94-ish. If you build out here, get nice and tight for a few days, put in something like that, and then you go and break 100. What it's doing is completely normal, building between 80 and 100, putting in higher lows, starting to get nice and tight on the right side. I think you can pay attention to this. See, let's pull up the weekly chart just to kind of show. We're just consolidating over these IPO highs. If you go back and look at what Robinhood did in 2025, 2024, I think, around that, what was it? $30 mark? No, it was like $50 mark. I can't remember. But that's like how some of these classic like deep IPO bases can behave, especially when they IPO at the end of a cycle and go through this, really deep due diligence stage. Um, RBRK, we talked about this, around anywhere from 90 to 95, ideally. Oh, Palantir. This is going to need probably a few days, but I think you have this about 162, 163-ish level marked out, as well as probably the low from this lower wick at 168. So, I want to start looking for some higher lows and some buys in this area. Again, depending on how the market behaves in the coming days. Zeta, Ring, FIVN. I don't really want to give commentary on those, because I think some of the best stocks, some of the leadership names are going to be offering better potential setups. So again, two things to mainly look for. This FSL I do think looks nice tight day. Probably has a big MPC type day on news coming, into the mid 30s. Snow I like. Oh, Intel. Right here, the lows here, $100 flat. And then the lows here, 94 flat. two areas to watch. This one's super simple. And then of course, levels above. The reason why I'm giving levels down below is because if you pull into those spots, like think about this, you have like, like Intel right here, you've got this level up above at 107, and then you've got a level at 100, and then level at like 95. Okay. Let's say this stock, is dancing around here, popping in rejection, pulling into, this level rejection, and then undercuts this spot and goes like this. Okay. Well, then you've got this area that the stock came into to define our stop. You've got this reclaim of this level, notable gap support, 20 May, what have you, as our entry trigger. And then you've got this super tight risk area right here. And then when the stock finally goes and breaks these highs, when you get some breakout momentum buyers to come in, you're already up, you know, 3, 4 to 1 risk to reward by the time it gets up to those highs. So that's why I like marking these out, because it can really give you that stop defining type of candle. A recent example of a trade that I took on this was Micron at 784 on Monday, a couple Mondays ago, to where we had only had this to go off of. Oops, I'm way too far back. Sorry. We only had this to go off of. Let me find it. Right here, and big gap up, big fade, and I'm like, guys, like check around this 800 spot, the lows here, 790 to 800. If you pull back into that spot and you start reclaiming, that's going to be a really nice area to risk off against, and then we probably chop around, around the 20 May before we wedge pop and start to go into an uptrend. And that's exactly what ended up happening, right? You pop in under 800. I got in at 784 with a low of day stop, risking 14 bucks. And by the time we were up at this 20 May, it was already $900, and I'm up $116 on $14 of risk. And then you chopped around, right? You reconfirmed a higher low. Okay, my stop is now, $40 in the money. Inside day, fine. Inside day, undercut inside day, another actually buy signal right there. A higher low and an undercut of double inside days. You anticipate that you're going to go remount the 20 and push higher from there. And you did exactly, right? Not necessarily like super enthusiastically, but you remounted the 20. There's that enthusiasm the next day. And then more, more. And then we're right here, and it's up at $1,000 today. You said I probably a good trim spot up at about 10:30, up 245 bucks on $14 of risk. It's just this is how, and all the momentum buyers, or whatever, want it to reclaim the 50-day up here, or want it to take out this range. And I'm like, the risk to reward is so much better down here. Sure, you're gonna end up losing a few more trades, sure, but you're gonna like get a 25 to 1 risk reward trade like this very, very regularly, because they're not super hard to come across in this market, and some of these awesome stocks that are just flying around all the time. So anyways, video ran a little bit long. Hope you enjoy. I'll see you in the morning. I have no idea what's gonna happen. I still have to talk to my wife. She fell asleep getting the kids to bed upstairs. So I'm waiting for her to wake up and come downstairs. But yeah, I told you guys all, Gabe's a little bit sick, and got to keep a close eye on him. He might have had a seizure today because he was sleeping so much. I'm not super sure. We'll never know, but he slept like most of the day basically since I picked him up. Didn't drink water, didn't eat anything, and that's how he gets. For those of you guys that don't know, my son's 8, nonverbal. He has autism. Puts everything in his mouth. Has some health and medical issues. Has had about 40 seizures, for give or take 40, and he's basically like a big old 9-month-old kid. Anyways, he's pretty cool. He's a happy dude, but yeah, he puts us through the ringer. So, anyways, yeah, he hasn't eaten or drank anything. Probably gonna have to take him in to get an IV. That's usually what we have to do to sedate him and get an IV in him. So he gets some fluids because he refuses to eat or drink whenever he gets a little bit sick. And I think he's got strep or something. So we'll see. Anyways, always thank you guys for your kindness. and patience with Patrick. So adios. See you guys tomorrow.